Welcome to the Daily Horror Habit Podcast. I'm your host, Jay Krieger, bringing you daily reviews of current and classic horror movies for your twisted pleasure. Be aware that these reviews and discussions may include spoilers. And as always, I hope you enjoy.
A house on the edge of the woods.
Out here is safe and peaceful.
A family alone.
Mom,
Yes, sweetheart?
can you leave the door open a crack?
A favorite uncle who needed their help.
Things haven't been going so good for me since I got back, sis.
Come stay with us.
But when they invited him in,
Think I better keep my eye on you.
they let in something they could never imagine. Or ever escape.
I think it's safe to say that we're all always in favor of new ways to tell or expand on classic stories. Ever since Lon Chaney Jr. became the original furball in 1941's The Wolfman, people have been terrified by the savage nature of werewolves. Ferocious, fast, and they could be hiding in plain sight. While some werewolf films have delved more into the lore of lycanthropy, others, such as my personal favorite Dog Soldiers, steers more towards brutal practical effects and action, the thrill of the hunt, as it were. And while there are different narrative avenues werewolf films can be steered down, I'd say it's a rarity that any particular one presents a wholly original take on this beloved monster. And while there are different narrative avenues werewolf films can be steered down, I'd say it's a rarity that we get a wholly original take on this beloved monster. That isn't a knock against the subgenre, but a reality that after any period of time, innovation is needed. But what if you told a werewolf story not from the perspective of a human being hunted, or the wolf doing the hunting, but from the perspective of a German Shepherd? Stick with me here. For today's installment of Tubi Tuesday, where I highlight a film available on Tubi TV, I'm reviewing writer and director Eric Red's 1996 lycanthrope film Bad Moon. Adapted from Wayne Smith's novel Thor, Bad Moon's unique approach gives it a breath of fresh air, narratively speaking, to separate it from your average werewolf flick. After surviving an attack from a werewolf during his trip to Nepal, Ted, played by Michael Paré, returns home with the curse of lycanthropy inside him, putting his sister Janet, played by Marielle Hemingway, nephew Brent, played by Mason Gamble, and the rest of their town in jeopardy. Now, that sounds about as stock standard as could be for a werewolf movie, but where Bad Moon takes an unusual turn is that the film's true protagonist and hero is actually Janet and Brett's German Shepherd, and the best boy who ever lived, Thor. Early on, Thor is the one who senses the change in Ted. Thor's behavior is viewed as troubling by his owners the more protective and aggressive he becomes towards Ted. Though in actuality, Thor is trying to warn his owners of the danger that's residing just outside their door. Animosity between Thor and Ted grows throughout the course of the film, literally a pissing match at one point. As Thor pisses on Ted's Airstream trailer and Ted pisses on Thor's doghouse, this tension grows until the howling hellish finale. This focus on a power struggle between alpha males is a fresh focus compared to the litany of werewolf movies that focus on man trying to understand and then attempting, while largely failing to tame the beast within. While there are snippets of Ted attempting to tame the beast, it never becomes the focal point, and the film is better off for it, giving it the creative spark it needs to be a narrative standout. One element that I've read was dropped from the novel, which I think would have been fascinating, was Thor struggling with whether or not the werewolf was an outside threat or a dominant pack member who must be respected. And now for a brief intermission. If you've been enjoying this episode of Daily Horror Habit, please take a moment to subscribe to the show on your preferred streaming platform or leave us a review on iTunes. And thank you for your continued support, and I hope you enjoy the remainder of today's horrifying episode. I get why the film focuses on the rather black and white pup protects the family angle, but this conflict would have further made the film's narrative a tad more compelling than it ended up being. Though, I'll take this war of attrition between man and pup over yet another werewolf movie depicting someone struggling with the realization that they're the wolf any day of the week. Had the film not had this spin, I'd honestly probably be pretty bored with Bad Moon, given its human characters pale in comparison to its canine hero. Michael Paré does a good enough job of playing the secretive lycanthrope, but everyone else feels like they're going through the motions, never quite eliciting the emotional connection needed for us to care about them outside of them being decent people. And while yes, who couldn't love the very cute Thor, to Eric Red's credit, his putting us in the paws of the pup is largely well done. We're with Thor a good amount of the film, exploring the wilderness and uncovering the truth about Ted. We feel his pain at his inability to warn his owners as his behavior is misinterpreted, time and time again. It really does make for a heartfelt portrayal, something that I'd never think I'd attribute to a canine performance outside of the usual Disney fare. But enough about story. This is a werewolf movie after all. How are those practical effects? Well, with the exception of one hilariously bad transformation scene, Bad Moon has a handful of instances of quality gore and werewolf design that, while not the best I've seen, more often than not it gets the job done. Apparently, Eric Red had to cut gore to avoid an NC-17 rating, but the film still manages to deliver the gory goods in savage lycanthropy fashion. All manner of throats get bit, limbs get lopped off, and bodies are hurled across rooms. It looks good enough, but isn't too far off the beaten path from what you might expect from a werewolf movie. Bad Moon is indicative of exactly the types of films I love discovering. From the outside, it's about as plain as could be for a subgenre flick, but in randomly deciding to give it a shot one night as I scrolled past it on Tubi TV, I was rewarded with probably the freshest narrative take on werewolves since the original. It really can't be understated just how well this new take elevates what is otherwise a boilerplate werewolf movie. And that's the beauty of Tubi TV's ever-expanding free with ads offerings, as otherwise, who knows if I'd ever have given this a chance. So, if you need a refreshing take on a werewolf film, Bad Moon has got you covered. And that'll do it for another installment of Daily Horror Habit's ongoing Tubi Tuesday segment. I'll see you guys tomorrow for another Daily Horror movie review, and next Tuesday for another Tubi TV offering. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to Daily Horror Habit on your preferred streaming service, and follow the show on Instagram at Daily Horror Habit and on Twitter at Daily Horror Pod for episode updates. Thanks again for listening, and I'll see you guys next time.